Each and every week, we talk about a different topic on mental health with the Birmingham Maple Clinic's Carrie Krawiec, and she's back today to talk about another important topic. Carrie, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate having you on. So across our lives in different areas, in our social life and our family life, certainly in our work life, we try to maintain relationships of all different kinds and all different levels of closeness and acquaintanceship. However, sometimes those relationships can go awry. In terms of what people can look for, what are some of those signs that people should be looking for in the way that they're interacting with other people to kind of get some notice that, okay, maybe this relationship is starting to take a turn for the worse, and maybe I need to take some steps to repair it?
Sure, I think that guilt and resentment are two indicators that a relationship is swinging in one direction or another. So if you're feeling especially bad, or you're getting the feedback that you feel you've done something wrong, or someone is indicating that you have, that would be one side. Or if you are feeling that someone else has done something wrong. So guilt is the feeling of anxiety that we've done something to hurt or harm someone else, and resentment is the feeling of anger that someone else has done something to hurt or harm us. So those are two indicators that our relationship may be fluctuating.
And so often when you have those issues come up, some people, if it's a personal issue with you, may take the approach of, well, they don't like it, they don't have to deal with me anymore. I'm just gonna push them out of my life. In some cases, you can't do that, or it's really not the best way to go about things to do that, because it's a close family relationship, or it's a work relationship, or it's something else it's a different kind of a relationship that you're going to be encountering pretty often. So when you reach that stage where that relationship has broken down, there is some tension there, there's definitely some significant conflict that's causing a rift. What are those first steps that you would suggest people take themselves in order to look at the situation from the other person's perspective, and maybe figure out what they can do to improve that relationship, or B, to approach that other person and try to extend an olive branch, so to speak, and repair that relationship?
Sure, I think in both examples, like you laid it out perfectly. So the first step is taking inventory. What are my behaviors? What am I doing that's contributing to this problem? Can you kind of be insightful and introspective and say, are there things about me that are making this situation hard? And then you might ask the next step, which is this something? Is there something that this person is doing that is making me uncomfortable? Can it be changed or addressed, or do I need to take time or space away from this person? And I think also initially, before a huge sever has happened, taking some strategies. What can you control? So if I know this person makes me uncomfortable because, after a certain time of a holiday party, they've drank too much, then you take account and say, look, then I'm going to strategize and I'm going to leave by 4 or 5 so I avoid the situation. It doesn't mean you don't go at all. It doesn't mean you cause a big stir. You can do subtle things to change your behavior to create the boundaries you need, right? And so then, and sometimes it's also communicating those. If there are certain boundaries, you say, like, I am going to leave at a certain time for this reason. If you'd like me to stay, be aware that these are my parameters. And if another person isn't compliant, you have to be the one that's responsible for yourself.
We're joined by Carrie Krawiec on today's edition of the Megacast. More information on the Birmingham Maple Clinic can be found on birminghammaple.com. That is birminghammaple.com for more information. Carrie, there's a cliche that time heals all wounds. I don't entirely believe that. I believe it as more of time heals some wounds. That scar tissue is going to develop over time. It's natural that people will endure and let go on some of these things that are causing these relationship issues. But in terms of making those repairs, or making those efforts to make those repairs, how important is timing in that? Because on the one hand, you let that kind of fester, that can make things boil over a little bit more aggressively than they would have if you intervene early on. On the other side, you have to gauge that maybe somebody needs some space before you're able to engage them in this. The situation's just a little bit too hot. So what do you have to say in terms of the timing of someone approaching making those initial repairs?
Yeah, I think you bring some interesting points. It's what happens during that time that's going to contribute to healing the wound. If you can take that time and maybe have some understanding, maybe look back at the history of the family relationships, maybe look back at some of the personality traits of this person that and really be, if you can use that time to say, look, I can understand why this person behaves this way. This is how my brother, sister, mother, whomever has always behaved. So of course, it makes sense to me that they would act like this at this time, even if I don't like it. Time, if you can use the time to sort of like, again, give yourself some grace and the other person some grace, the intensity of the feelings may lower. Like you said, if you use that time to sort of stack your arsenal with more and more evidence of how this person has wronged you or been inappropriate or whatever, you're going to go into any interaction right ready for war. So like you said, kind of time heals all wounds. Last week you and I talked about like sports and sports injuries and how those things may parlay into mental health. That it's like slow and steady wins the race, trying something delicate, trying something small first. I often tell people too, it shouldn't be all one. If you're repairing a relationship that's been severed, you're not only doing the work of healing the relationship, some of it has to be just moving forward with polite, nice, current things. So it's a little bit of a three-legged race. It's not sweeping it under the rug, but it's putting a little bit in the bank of like, let's just do, like, let's participate in holidays. Let's do these things, get familiar and comfortable with each other again. Then, separate from that, set up times, maybe use the therapist, maybe construct specific times with boundaries and outlines, of who's going to be present, how long is it going to last, what do we intend to discuss, but not let that interfere with just regular family stuff.
We're joined by Carrie Krawiec from the Birmingham Maple Clinic on today's edition of the Megacast, talking about conflict in our day-to-day life and when peace and reconciliation can be achieved in relationships that have a rift of all different kinds. And Carrie, it's different when it's family. When it is a friend situation, you can work to repair that and you can let them know that, hey, this behavior that you're doing or these behaviors that you're exhibiting are hurting me. I don't appreciate when you do this to me. It makes me feel bad. And if they don't reciprocate that with, okay, I'm sorry I made you feel that way. I'm sorry I put you in that sort of position. Here's what I'm going to do to change, or at least level with you and have a conversation on what they may be doing wrong. You can move on from that relationship, and it will be tough, but you can move on from that. With family, it's a lot different. In some cases, you either can't move on, or it's really, really tough to make a decision to break away from people of your family. It's one of those things that really should just be that absolute last resort. So when it comes to family, how does that change the game in terms of approaching these sorts of situations and these sorts of conflicts?
Sure. And you bring up an interesting point, and I'm thinking, I know some of it is just speculation, but I think about the princes and their wives is how do you define family, right? So if the married in partners are having conflict, is that family? If the biologically related people are having conflict, if that's family, if it's one marital partner and somebody else biologically related, right? Like what are the boundaries? What things in the family can everybody acknowledge? Maybe like these roles are intertwined in ways that complicate it because maybe the definition of family means something different to each of the people involved. So certainly, again, the same thing like we talked about, starting out small, setting out expectations. Who are our key players in the conflict? Who plays a role in keeping the conflict maintaining? Are there other allies or other people who could be involved to be helpful to the situation, and are they willing to do so? Or are they not willing to do so? And what are the consequences of it going on? Does that mean there's, say, for example, separate holidays or exclusion? Is everybody willing to sort of autograph a contract that says, okay, we're okay with it going on this way? Or are people willing to come to the table and brainstorm some solutions and say, well, I'm willing to do this or contribute in this way if it makes it better for everybody?
More information and ways to get in contact with the Birmingham Maple Clinic and their team, including Carrie, can be found birminghammaple.com or by calling them 248 646 6659. 248 646 6659. And this is all kind of sparked from what's been in the news of late across the ocean in the United Kingdom with the continued controversy, so to speak, within the royal family in the United Kingdom, particularly with Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle, who his wife has not quite particularly been welcomed into that family in a very amicable way. And it was even put on example during some of the funeral services for the late Queen Elizabeth II. And so, in that sort of a situation, when you are welcoming somebody else into your family, this is a loved one of yours that is becoming part of your family by way of marriage or just a significant relationship in your life. How do you what do you suggest people do to achieve that balance between managing those relationships with their family that have been developed over years, over decades, and managing them accepting and bringing in this new person that maybe does things a little bit differently, maybe isn't familiar with all the traditions and the relationships within that family, but is ultimately a part of that family?
Sure, I love, yeah, or centuries, and with regards to the royal family.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's such a symbol because it's absolutely true. When you're bringing in a new marital partner, there's two things at play, and there's their relationship symbolically highlights this. Is you're absolutely right. You are creating a new culture that's including history, traditions, rituals from two prior cultures. Like when you're traveling to another country, you may for example be expected to do things that are not commonplace in the country you're from. Say for example, you must wear pants or long skirts when entering a place of worship or something like that, right? And so when you are traveling to another country, are you respectful of their traditions? Do you understand what they are? Do you try to honor them to the best of your ability or excuse yourself when you cannot? And can we think of our families that way? Are we taking time to understand the history? How did some of these come to play? Being both curious and compassionate to say, oh, that's so funny, we don't do that in my family, would you like to hear what we do? Or do you have any interest in doing it differently, and how has it worked for you? As opposed to just assuming there's a right way and a wrong way, or that something, or that you're somehow entitled to do things your way because you've done them. Perhaps offering there might be some alternatives, but I'm also willing to sort of respect what is done and what has been done historically here, or at least understand the reasons why.
Melanie, I'd say Melanie, Carrie, a couple more minutes with you on today's edition of the program. You can find more information on birminghammaple.com and to get in contact with them as well. If you're having some of these issues in your life and your family life, certainly in your work life and your social life, and you need some help working through these situations on a more personal level, it's always helpful to talk to a professional. 248-646-6659. Carrie, anything else that we should be considering on this topic or other mental health topics at this time?
Sure. I think with exactly what you said, family therapists can be helpful if the person is willing to come to the table to provide the structure, to provide a time and a space to be separate from your other family engagements and involvement to really tease out some of the issues. But therapy can also be beneficial individually. Perhaps you make an attempt to reach out to someone or someone to you, and you're not sure you're ready. An individual therapist can help work on what skills and resources you need to feel sort of protected and open. What are the barriers? Have there been traumas or other things? And perhaps your instinct or intuition to not re-engage this person is the right one, and a therapist could give that affirmation and validation as well.
Well, Carrie, appreciate your time. Thank you for your insight as well and helping people kind of get a baseline to go from on some of these really complicated issues when it comes to managing relationships all across your life.
Thank you for having me.